Hi, and welcome to the Simcoe County Archives. My name is Jen Huddleston, and I'm the Private Collections Archivist.
And I am Ellen Miller, the Corporate and Municipal Records Archivist.
At the Simcoe County Archives, we work to collect, preserve, and make accessible the documentary heritage of the County of Simcoe. We take in records from the Corporation of the County of Simcoe, the lower-tier municipalities, and from private citizens.
As Remembrance Day approaches, archive staff want to highlight a few items from our collection that bear witness to the home friend activities that were happening around Simcoe County. And for that, we're going to be looking at some records that have been featured in these segments before, and that's the Women's Institutes, and specifically their Tweedsmuir community histories.
As a county primarily made up of rural communities, it's perhaps not surprising that the WI really took root in Simcoe County. Over the course of the WI's history here, there's actually been over 130 individual branches representing all kinds of different communities and settlements across the county. A lot of those branches have amalgamated or disbanded over time, so they don't exist anymore, but thankfully a lot of them did deposit their records here at the Simcoe County Archives. We've actually been the main repository for their archival collections for over 50 years, so we do have a substantial number of records here. As we're talking about wartime efforts of Women's Institute members, we thought that we had to highlight one of the most famous WI members anywhere, who also just so happened to be a Simcoe County resident, and that is Madge Robertson Watts. She was born and grew up in Collingwood. Following the death of her husband in 1913, Madge and her two sons left for England. With the onset of the First World War in 1914, Madge recognized the benefits organized rural women could bring to the war effort. She successfully helped to establish a Women's Institute presence in the UK, and she imparted many of the tenets and practices established in Canadian Women's Institute branches for these new members. Under Madge's direction, the WI played a key role in wartime agricultural production. Through their efforts, food production and distribution was optimized to such a degree that it surpassed England's supply requirements. In 1919, Madge was appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire for her role in establishing the WI in the UK. A local Women's Institute branch was actually named in her honor, the Mrs. Alfred Watt Memorial Branch, which has membership based in Collingwood. And that was established in 1953.
In the years between the wars, the idea of the Women's Institutes creating local histories took root. Lady Tweedsmuir, when her husband was Governor General of Canada, expressed interest in the Institute. She was actually herself an active member back in England, and she suggested that they put together and keep maintaining local community histories. Now known as the Tweedsmuir Community History Books, or just the Tweedsmuir Histories, they contain a wealth of information pertaining to the communities from this time of settlement right up until the current day.
The Simcoe County Archives has actually over 200 individual community history books, Tweedsmuir history books, which is a fabulous element of our collections here. And we've pulled a couple of examples to show you. A lot of them definitely documented the home front work that the Women's Institute members were completing during both World Wars, but especially during the Second World War. And this one here is from the Craigshurst Women's Institute branch, and you can see here they have a lot of information. They've documented handily in a list different things that they did to contribute to the war effort. Fundraising was a major concern for the Women's Institutes during the war, and they ran a number of different initiatives, including quilt making and knitting goods for auctions. Funds that were raised were directed to organizations like the Red Cross, the War Charities Funds, Seeds for Britain, Bundles for Britain, and the European Children's Relief Fund. They also organized supplies for use overseas, such as the collection of scrap metal and, interestingly, milkweed, which was used as both a filling for life preservers and in the manufacture of parachutes. And finally, they sent over care packages to local servicemen and women. This branch, Craigshurst, actually collected a number of letters written by soldiers on the front line thanking them for their Christmas care packages. And here we have one addressed to the WI from Mr. Alfred Weeks, who was a local man who was stationed in Holland. The letter is dated November 15th, 1944. And I'll just read the first paragraph because it's pretty charming. So Alfred writes, "Hello, Mrs. Ellesmere. This will just be a note to thank you and the folks of the WI for the swell parcel I received yesterday. It was darned nice of you to send the boys over here these parcels. The other 4 boys who are in my tank crew I want to thank you as well, as every parcel we get is shared among the crew. The cake, cookies, fudge, and everything was in perfect condition. And by the way, whoever made that fudge sure can make swell fudge.
Some tweezers, such as this one compiled by the Mrs. Alfred Watt Memorial Branch that Jen mentioned a moment ago, also contain photographs and honor rolls for those who served and or died while overseas. On the 30th of December 1918, the Township of Nottawasaga held a service of Thanksgiving at the Duntroon's Sons of Scotland Hall. On the back cover, there's their township honor roll listing those who had made the supreme sacrifice, as well as those who were still on active service overseas. This is a composite photograph of the men and women from Nottawa who served during the Second World War. 3 of those pictured died overseas. Flying Officer Norman Redpath was missing and presumed killed during air operations over Germany. Sergeant Charles McNichol was killed in action in Germany, and Private Nelson Boyce was killed in action in France. Boyce's sister, leading aircraft woman Beulah Boyce, who was also pictured, served in the Women's Division of the Royal Canadian Air Force. As we've indicated, it really was a community and they were looking after their friends and family members. Other Tweesmere community histories held at the archives contain similar items of memory for the men and women who served during various international wars and conflicts. Many of those names are also captured on the physical war memorials erected in communities throughout Simcoe County. In Penetanguishene, it was the members of the Women's Institute who, in 1949, oversaw the construction of a memorial to those who fell during the Great Wars. A few years later, a plaque was added to the memorial to honor Kenneth Roger Montague and brothers Mauriel Joseph and Herman Joseph Morrow, who died while in active service in Korea. 2 memorials, the virtual Simcoe County Remembers, available on the Archives website, and the War Memorial plaques on display at the Simcoe County Museum, provide county-wide honor rolls for those who died during the First and Second World Wars, respectively. On Remembrance Day, November 11th, we wear a poppy in remembrance of those who gave their lives while serving in Canada's military and related branches during various wars, conflicts, and in peacekeeping.
During Remembrance Week, November 5th to 11th, we honor Canada's veterans for the service they gave.
During Remembrance Month, through this segment, the archive staff hopes that you'll also consider the work that was done here at home on the home front by the ladies of the Women's Institute.
If you're interested in learning more about our wartime and related records, we have a guide to military history available on our website, and we also have blog posts on Madge Robertson Watt and the Women's Institute. And of course, if you're interested in coming to the archives to look at any of our holdings, you can do so by booking an appointment online or by sending us an email at archives@simcoe.ca.